great guide. It's called The Rose Guide to the Temple. And Dr. Price, thank you for joining us on today's issues.
Well, thank you, man. I don't have tickets to anything now, so
Okay.
be aware.
Well, so we can't get any free tickets to anything, huh? All right.
Not from me, but
You got to love a guest that just brings that right to the forefront.
Yeah.
I can tell you, though, you have a very compelling book that we're going to talk about today, and that's The Rose Guide to the Temple. The artwork in here is incredible.
Dr. Randall Price, our guest. Before we get into that, Jim, I wanted to give Dr. Price a chance. He's been on our program many times before, but would you inform our listeners of your day job and then how it leads to what we're going to be discussing today, Dr. Price?
Well, actually, I have two day jobs. One is a professor at Liberty University. I direct the Center for Judaic Studies at what is actually the world's largest Christian university. And then I also am involved as president of World of the Bible Ministries, which seeks to bring the world of the Bible to the word of the church. And that involves, of course, doing works, research, and writing, and we produce films involved in taking people firsthand to the Holy Land, and then, of course, archaeology. And I've been involved for 10 years as director of excavations at Qumran, which is the site of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
So talk about your book, Rose Guide, R-O-S-E, Rose Guide to the Temple. What does that mean?
Well, Rose Publishing is where that title comes from, and they are well known as a publisher for colorful, very attractive study materials for those interested in the Bible. And they're doing this for many, many years. So this is simply one of many guides that they've produced. This one having to do with the subject of the temple in Jerusalem, which was central not only to the ancient past, but such a pivotal political issue today.
Oh, in
You
the
okay?
book, yeah, I'm sorry, yes, sir. I was flipping over and I'd seen the attachment here that I want to ask about in just a moment. But Dr. Price, in your book that we're talking about here, what is the base practical application for this book? Because I have to tell you, I plan on this becoming, we homeschool our child, and I plan on this becoming one of her lessons. Is this kind of what the plan
About
for
the
the book
temple?
was? About the temple?
Yeah, I tell you, at Liberty University, one of the courses that I teach is a required course called Survey of the Bible. And the Old Testament and New Testament has at the center of it the whole concept and teaching about the temple. It was the temple that God used to establish his presence on earth. It was the temple that regulated the whole calendar of Israel. It was the temple that Jesus was dedicated when he was first born, to which he went when he was age 12. This is where he ended up the last week of his life. All of this forms such a major backdrop to the teaching of the Bible that we can't ignore the subject. But today, because of the promises made in the Bible about Israel's future, we look and we see that the Temple Mount today is the most conflicted and volatile acreage on earth.
Mm-hmm.
So for a person who is interested in the Bible and wants to know what it's about, wants to apply spiritual truths to their lives and grow as a believer, to know about the temple is to know about, probably the most significant thing God ever gave in his Word. The place where it was located, Jerusalem, is the most often mentioned city in the Bible, over 800 times. The temple is used not only as Jesus speaks of his own body, he speaks of our bodies, the church, and he speaks of our individual bodies as a temple. And then later he says the final place where people will end up in heaven, the New Jerusalem, is a place where God Almighty and the Lamb are the temple. So it's just so much a part of the focus of Scripture, yet it's something we know so little about because the physical temple has existed in our reality.
When was the temple, the last temple that existed, the Jewish temple in Jerusalem, when was it destroyed?
Yeah, the last temple was destroyed in A.D. 70. We know that from all the historical sources because the Romans themselves were the ones that destroyed that temple in punishment of a Jewish revolt. And they then kept very accurate records of this. One of the first century historians, Flavius Josephus, gives great details, a whole book called The Wars of the Jews, in which he describes in detail how the temple not only was built, but how it was destroyed.
Does that have any? I don't know how much you want to comment on prophetic implications here for a rebuilt temple, but I know a lot of people are curious about that. Where is the rebuilding of this Jewish temple in Jerusalem play in the prophetic timetable?
Well, I think very large. That's, of course, disputed by people because of the way they interpret prophecy. But I think that the temple was, of course, a literal institution in the past, although a lot of the sacrificial system things were fulfilled in the death of Jesus. There are elements of the temple that continue into the future because it was the place where God met man on earth. And when we talk about the return of Jesus Christ to earth, and those who believe he will establish a literal earthly kingdom, part of that will involve a rebuilt temple. The last 9 chapters of the book of Ezekiel talk about a temple in great detail. It even give plans on how it can be built and all that will take place within it. It's very difficult, in my opinion, to spiritualize that and simply make it an application for something else. I think it looks at a definite period in future history. But we deal with that in the book and go through some of the different viewpoints on that. I would say that today, Orthodox Judaism holds that a temple would be rebuilt, and they're in the process of trying to make that possible through not only political legislation but also through actual building implements. They have institutes there that are involved in how this new temple would be designed and built and how the priests would officiate. And of course that's at the center of the conflict because that Temple Mount today is shared by Islam, and their Dome of the Rock and their Al-Aqsa Mosque are constructed there.
We're talking with Dr. Price about his book, The Rose Guide to the Temple, and it's an incredible book. There's some great timelines in there. There's some great artwork, archaeology. Well, it does talk about the architecture of the temple as well, but some of the archaeology that you go into in the book is part of what you're doing, as you mentioned. In fact, in the past couple of years, back in '96, the Islamic authorities began removing tons of archaeological debris from the Mount, and you guys were
What
actually
Mount, for those who want to know?
The Temple Mount. I'm sorry,
in Jerusalem.
Yes, sir. And so you guys are literally going through what is debris to find parts of history.
Yes, it's one of the unique features of the book. Why it really has something for everyone. You mentioned all the artwork and the diagrams and the plastic overlays and charts, which covers the history of the temple. But there are these little asides that talk about what is happening today to establish our knowledge of the temple. Mm-hmm. And one of these is what's called the Temple Mount Sifting Project. The Jewish authorities recovered a lot of the debris that the Muslims had thrown out as they were constructing new mosque on the Temple Mount. And this is actually Jewish history. And they found literally 6,000 coins. They found all kind of seals with names on them and architectural pieces. When I was working there, I worked there every year with a small team, but when I was there for a number of weeks, we found a number of the seashells that the priest had used to dye their priestly garments, to go back, even an Egyptian seal. So there's many, many things that are possible. A lot of this is things that are not well known, and we bring out in the book.
We're talking to Dr. Randall Price. He is a professor at Liberty University. You're executive director of the Center for Judaic
Studies.
Yeah,
right.
studies.
We have a program in Jewish studies for those Christians who would like to know more about the Jewish people and the land of Israel and how that fits within the Bible and within their faith.
And how do you get access to that?
Well, they can go to libertyuniversity.edu. That is the website for the university. Our particular department then would have, after libertyuniversity.edu, / and the word Judaic Studies.
Okay.
They can go right to our department and see all that we have to offer.
Folks, maybe you're a new Christian, or maybe you're not a Christian at all, and you're wondering, what are these people talking about? How does an ancient Jewish temple fit into Christianity today? Of course, Dr. Price has been explaining some of that, but the heritage, the roots of Christianity are in Judaism and the Old Testament. We read about all the Jewish traditions and God's relationship to the Hebrew people and the holy city of Jerusalem and how important the temple was and the Temple Mount where Abraham was to sacrifice Isaac. So there's so much history, so much symbolism as well as literalism that applies to us in understanding the New Testament. I wanted to ask you, you want to comment on that, Randall?
Yeah, let me just say Isaiah chapter 56 and verse 7 is a passage that Jesus cited in the New Testament. It's almost cited in every one of the Gospels. And he said, "My house will be a house of prayer for all people." And that is a statement about the temple, and its design was not just for the Jewish people, it was for the Gentiles as well. As God envisioned it, it was a place where man and God could meet in a way they could not meet any other way, because man is sinful and God is holy. And this was God's design. It's God's purpose. And the more we understand about it, the more we understand about our own relationship with God himself.
Talk about you got on page 31, you got a section called The Mystery of the Lost Ark. And of course, we're talking about the Ark of the Covenant, which was contained the Ten Commandments of God, and which was carried by the Jewish people, wherever they went. And we don't know what happened to the Ark of the Covenant, down through history. Do you know when the last time it was actually physically seen by anyone?
Yes, the implication from the Bible is that it's in 2 Chronicles chapter 35 and verse 3. There is a command by the King Josiah to put the ark back into the temple which Solomon had made. It says it will no longer be a burden on your shoulders. This was apparently an order to the priest, apparently one order of the priest called the Kohathite priest, who carried the ark, and apparently they were carrying it or had it stored somewhere else because Manasseh, one of the last evil kings of Israel, had put an idol in the place of the Holy of Holies in the temple, and so the ark had been taken out by the faithful priests. Now it was to be brought back because this was a time of reform. So the last time it was actually seen by people was when it was being reinstalled in this first temple. That temple was destroyed in 586 BC, and there's no evidence or information really about what happened to the ark after that. I wrote a whole book on this, which is available from our website called worldofthebible.com. But in the book, Rose Guide, on page 31, as you mentioned, we have one small page which deals with this history and actually takes us back to Jewish tradition, in which there is an account in the Jewish Mishnah, which is a book that the Jews put together related to their understanding of events at the time and legislation taken from the Bible. And they mention that in the time of the Second Temple, when Jews were taking the wood for the sacrifices, there was good wood and bad wood. They took this wood was being separated. One of the priests noticed that the stones and the floor were different than the other stones, and he went to tell his friends what he found. He said he was struck dead in mid-sentence lest he betray the hiding place of the ark. And so Jewish tradition has held that the ark from the First Temple period was taken and hidden beneath the Temple Mount, which exists today, and that if that location could be accessed, can't be because of the political controversy and hold by Islam on the site, that the ark could possibly be found. So we at least give that theory in the book and talk about what we know from the Bible.
This is the program, Today's Issues, on American Family Radio. Our guest is Dr. Randall Price, and we're talking about the Rose Guide to the Temple.